In the sweltering summer of 1945, as World War II spiraled towards its end, a 29-year-old Japanese marine engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi was finally heading home. He'd just finished a 3-month business trip in Hiroshima for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, designing massive oil tankers for the war effort. He was eager to get back to Nagasaki, to his wife Katsuko, and their baby son Katsutoshi. But on the morning of August 6th, just as he was about to leave, he realized he'd forgotten something critical. His Hanko, the personal stamp needed for all his travel papers. Annoyed at his own mistake, Yamaguchi turned back toward the shipyard. He hopped on a streetcar, a simple, everyday act that would place him at the very center of history. It was 8:15 a.m. The air was thick and humid. He was about 3 kilometers from the city center when he looked up. A single American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, was soaring through the clear sky. He saw a small object drop from the plane, drifting down on parachutes. Instinct kicked in. Yamaguchi leaped from the streetcar and dove into a nearby potato field, covering his eyes and plugging his ears with his thumbs, and the world ended. A brilliant, searing white flash consumed everything. It wasn't just light. It was a physical force that felt like it was burning his retinas through his closed eyelids. A moment later, a shockwave like the hammer of a god slammed into him. The sound was so immense it ruptured his eardrums instantly. The blast hurled him through the air, scorching his entire left side. Buildings around him crumpled like they were made of paper. And in the sky, a terrifying, monstrous mushroom cloud boiled upwards, blotting out the sun. The first atomic bomb, little boy, had detonated over Hiroshima. Dazed, burned, and half-deaf, Yamaguchi staggered to his feet. He was walking through a living nightmare. The city he knew just moments before was now a smoldering ruin. Rivers were choked with the dead. The air was a toxic cocktail of dust and the sickening smell of burning flesh. People wandered like ghosts, their skin hanging from their bodies in shreds, begging for water. It was like walking through hell, he would later recall. He spent that night in an air raid shelter, listening to the groans of the dying, his own body racked with pain and the first signs of radiation sickness. But he knew he had to keep moving. The next day, bandaged and bleeding, he dragged himself to what was left of Hiroshima's train station. Miraculously, a train was running. He boarded it, and after a grueling 200-kilometer journey, he arrived back in Nagasaki on August 8th. His wife was horrified by his injuries, but relieved he was alive. He was exhausted, burned, and sick, but in wartime Japan, duty was everything. He knew he had to report to work. On the morning of August 9th, he limped into his Mitsubishi office, about 3 kilometers from Nagasaki's own shipyards. His colleagues gathered around, stunned that he had survived. He tried to explain what he had witnessed, what was almost impossible to describe. He told them, one single bomb. It destroyed the entire city of Hiroshima. His supervisor scoffed at him. "You're an engineer," he said dismissively. "How could one bomb do that? You must be crazy." The words were still hanging in the air when it happened again. It was 11:02 a.m. The sky outside the office window erupted in that same blinding, world-ending flash. An earth-shattering roar followed, shaking the building to its very foundations. Yamaguchi's first thought was chilling. "I thought the mushroom cloud had followed me from Hiroshima." The second atomic bomb, Fat Man, had exploded over Nagasaki. This time, a range of hills between the office and the epicenter shielded him from the worst of the direct blast. The building groaned and shuddered, but it stood. Yamaguchi survived again. His home was destroyed, but by a stroke of fate, his wife and son were also safe. Katsuko had gone out that morning to find ointment for his burns from Hiroshima, an errand that took them out of the most dangerous zone just in time. In the weeks that followed, Yamaguchi fought a desperate battle with acute radiation sickness. His hair fell out in clumps. He vomited constantly. A high fever raged through his weakened body, but against all odds, he recovered. He lived a quiet life for decades, raising his family and working until retirement. He carried the invisible scars, always fearing that his exposure might have affected his children, but his family thrived, free from any genetic defects. For most of his life, his story was considered too unbelievable to be true. But in 2009, The Japanese government officially recognized him as a Niju Hibakusha, a double bombing survivor. He was the only person ever to receive that status. That same year, at the age of 93, he stood before the United Nations and made a simple plea to the world as a survivor of the atomic bombings. I will continue to tell the world why nuclear weapons should be abolished. Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed away in 2010 at 93. His life story is one of incredible endurance, but it also teaches us something deeply uncomfortable about human nature. After Hiroshima, he tried to warn people. He told them the exact, terrifying truth. One bomb, one flash, an entire city erased. And they didn't believe him. Not because he was lying, but because the truth was simply too big, too horrifying to fit into their understanding of the world. We are good at imagining danger, but we are terrible at accepting its scale. If something has never happened before, our first instinct is to downplay it, to argue with it, to call it impossible. We protect our sense of safety by denying the unbelievable. Even experts do this. When Nagasaki burned, it wasn't a failure of information that led to the tragedy. It was a failure of imagination. Yamaguchi survived twice not because humans learn quickly from disaster, but because history doesn't wait for us to believe it's real. We don't reject warnings because they are unclear. We reject them because they threaten our feeling of security. And by the time the proof arrives, it's often already too late. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it. The lessons of the past are only useful if we remember them. Subscribe for more stories that make us think.